Happy Friday, everyone. This is Crypto and Coffee with the Trading Bros. I'm your host, Clutch Crypto.
I'm B. Wellington.
And we saw a pump over the night, and we're going to go in to the charts right now, dive in, and we're going to see if this pump's going to last. B. Wellington, let's
Richard. Hey, Dick. Since you're already in Bookmap, why don't we go through Bookmap? We'll switch up the.
Oh, we're going to do a little switcheroo.
A little bit.
Okay,
yeah.
This is super cool. Okay, this is ETH on Bookmap. As you can see, guys, we came in last night around 10 o'clock last night. Had a little nice reverse that came up, brought us into a good pump. We pumped all the way up to just under 2680. And we had a little pullback. Now we're kind of hovering in this range. We have roughly about 13 minutes until New York opens. As you can see, we are weighted heavily to the downside right now. You can see that CVD is trying to flip and continue to the downside. It looks like we did have a peak right here around 10,500 on the CVD chart. So we need to pay really close attention in the next 10 minutes or so to see kind of what happens, to see if we're going to see some more continuation to the downside, or if this is nothing more than just kind of a stop and grab, hunt to the low real quick, load up orders. And I would say right now, your main area that you really want to pay attention to is going to be between 2600 and 2580 right there. We break below 2580, I would expect some more movement to the downside for today. So let's see what happens when New York opens. Also have we have High Block Capital over here as well. Get this guy up for you guys. Let's rerun it. We are kind of hovering in the middle of this chart today, maybe. Okay, cool. So you guys can see that we're here in the middle, but you can also see that we have a couple of $50 million long liquidations right below us. So are they going to leave those out here? My personal opinion, not likely. These areas are going to be 25.97. That is right in that range that we just talked about on Bookmap. Okay, guys, so pay attention to us coming down here in this area. As you can also see, this updates every minute. I'm sorry for this. As you can see, we came down here. We have a low. Again, if we get below this point, which is around 2607, we break below that here in the next few minutes, go ahead and bet that we're going to go down. We're going to see 2597. We might even see some more areas. This guy right here is a 2571, which is going to invalidate support at 2580 on Bookmap that we just talked about. We break below that, expect some more continuation, and I would expect us to come down here into the low 2500 range, and then kind of see what happens there. Again, your next point of invalidation at that point is going to be 2518. So if we get down there, we break 2518, we'll continue more to the downside today. So those are key areas to pay attention to for the downside. Going upwards, we can get all the resistance levels on TradingView from B. Wellington here in just a few minutes. So B. Wellington, that's about all I got for High Block and Bookmap. Why don't you take us over to your charts?
All right, Dick.
I feel like I said a lot in a short amount of time.
I mean, you went through it pretty
thoroughly.
I would
say.
Quickly. Yeah, I would say that too. So let's see here.
I'm tired of editing all the time.
So yeah.
Hold on. Okay, you're good.
What happened? What was?
I was moving my screens around on the. Like I have one screen designated for the show, and I was moving shit around. We're good.
Cool. So here we are on the daily on the ETH USDT chart. We look at the daily, pretty often just to see where the real trend is, or the macro trend. And obviously the macro trend is still down. So this is the downward trending line off of the drop that we've experienced since all-time highs. This is our redrawn trend line um, that we're using to kind of anticipate where they're going to have more traders, or at least,
Hey,
where we anticipate more traders.
hey, bro.
These lines here, these green lines and this red line, actually is supposed to be green, are just the tops and peaks of some of these candles. So we know kind of when they're breaking out of a candle on a larger time frame. And so those peaks are in there as well. But if you look at it, you know, we've got this, what you would call a W, formation, but you still got a lot of imbalance in these charts on the wicks on the
Hey,
downside.
you know why I like that we live on the 1 minute?
Why?
Because we get to see these exact patterns play out all the time, and now we're up here on a much larger time frame, on a much larger scale. And you want my opinion on what happens when you see what we're seeing right here?
Go ahead.
So I'm seeing a catastrophic drop from here.
Yeah, no, I mean, these don't generally play out well.
I
You know
see
what
a
I think we can.
catastrophic drop. We might
Yeah,
come
but
up just a
what
little
I
bit
think
and tap that 50 one more time, but after that, baby, it's adios.
yeah, no, I would anticipate that too. But I would also say that even on a larger time frame, like you said, I would expect another fast move, right? Some vector candles, which we haven't really seen from a daily standpoint in a while, right? December was kind of our last vector for a daily. So, but we've had plenty of vectors on the downside, and these vectors are only, they're continuing. They're not going away. And so, what you would anticipate, or what, like you said, when we watch on the 1 minute, we kind of zoom in here. This is more of a, maybe not an extreme case of it, but this is a volume changing candle. I mean, we're just hugging this line here. But again, the imbalances here, these wicks generally serve as imbalances that we return to. But I would anticipate that we move back up in order to trap some more longs before we then take that big plunge. All this choppiness right here is just to trap essentially, right? Those that are anticipating the downside move, to trap those guys, bring them up. Those guys that were a little bit too early on the move, and so then we'll just kind of see this really range in before they're, where they have to make a decision, right, relative to some type of direction, either way. And so that's on the daily. If we hop down to the hourly, you'll see something very similar, but you'll see kind of the inner workings of that, of the plays that we've had. So, as you can see here, especially on the volume side, we have had some volume come in on the positive side, some vector candles to the upside, but we really haven't follow through with that. It looks like the Brinks, we brought things down, which would I would anticipate that we probably have a little bit of a move up um, prior to open, not prior to open, but at open, and then possibly a pullback as we go into the weekend. I just don't, if I had to put money on it, I just imagine most people don't want to hold risk, heading into the weekend, at least in the stock market. And I guess, we've been holding pretty strong with that correlation so far. If we hop over to things like the funding rate, which we like to take a look at, if I can get this fucking screen to work, and it's pretty much mixed across the board, relative to funding rates. Again, I always like to see FTX, right, which generally when they're negative on the both the current and predicted rate, and generally we drop. They're pretty smart. But it seems to be pretty mixed across the board relative to
What
where
normally
those
happens
positions
when
are.
you see FTX in a negative state for current and predicted? What typically happens when you see that?
It drops, right? Because I think they control so much spot that they really hedge. This also could be a result of the fact that we dropped last night and they're still in those positions as well. The majority of those positions, but not on the predicted rate. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But I always like to point it out just because, It's something that we look at. Open interest, I don't anticipate we've had that much change. I mean, 5.6 billion, we've had less than a 1% increase. We really have just been chopping in this close range, so really hadn't had a lot of opportunity to build up on that. I was actually, and I'll probably do this weekend, is look at some of the volatility measures within the futures, meaning the put and call, kind of the volatility and the ratios there, to start helping with analyzing what this number here means.
Is that
Because
putt and calls?
put and calls, yeah.
Putt and calls?
So yeah, which can equate to volatility measures, right? When the overall market really beneficial with the S&P, um, but not really seeing that much on the crypto side because it's not as big. As you can see, it's perpetual market is pretty much what controls the futures. Your options really are not that indicative, but it continues to grow, and they're still measuring volatility in the chart, and it still may be helpful to look at somewhat of that, real volatility versus implied volatility, and see what that looks like. Speaking of, well, let's. I know you like to look at this chart, which I pulled up earlier. This is the hourly for ETH, USD, and Binance. So, we've got declines in price, right? Over this period of time, we've also had not, not a surprise, but we've had a decrease in OI over that period of time. And you can see as spot, and this is spot USDT, continues to climb. This is spot USD, but USDT continues to climb. That's really been more in line with pricing. So as you see the trend here, the trend has been down. You've got some bottoms here as well relative to CVD. So just depending on what that looks like, but this is, pretty well correlated with how the market's been moving, which is not surprising. When you take out USD out of this USDT number, what I look at this is, there are folks that are using USDT banks, which are probably a little larger and probably can be a little bit more aggressive with USDT versus USD on that end. And so these were inversely correlated, right? So this one's going this way, that one's going this way. You've had a run up that follows spot, and then you've kind of had a convergence where prices come down. Now, we don't have a lot of history relative to when those things diverge, but it's maybe something we want to take a look at in the future. Going back to the market, so futures market's about to open in 1 minute. But as we can see in NASDAQ, let me just make sure these are updated. Yeah, so NASDAQ's starting to take a little bit of a plunge at the open. But again, we are in the first hour, so all this stuff can change. But if we just look at it, gold's down. Oil is up, but it's dropped from $130.
Dang, man! Wow. I hope gas prices reflect that.
There's a little bit of a variation there. If we look at the economic calendar just to see what we have, we do have a big week next week. I was looking at it earlier. I don't know why this was only giving me to March 4th. Oh, here we go. That was from last week. So next week we've got FOMC announcement on Fed's funds rate on Wednesday of next week, right? So as we're kind of ranging into this price, ranging into this choppiness, and kind of getting to the end of this, if you want to call it a wedge, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for them to time this up with Wednesday of next week, where we kind of chopped around in the weekend, kept things real calm, had some moves early in the week, and then counter those moves with the announcement of what the Fed funds rate is. So next week is going to be a big week news wise. We've got just a lot of news coming out, the latter part of the week. So that'll be very interesting to see kind of what happens, and and really what they do with this first rate cut or rate hike, you know, as the first one that's supposed to be anticipated this year with the war that's going on. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
So really, so if I, you know, if I had to finalize things up, I mean, like I said, we've got some volume coming in here. It wouldn't surprise me if we had a short-term move to the upside since we've been riding on this line for so long. We've had a, you know, we've had a vector that's broken out on the 1 hour. Um, so we're kind of in a shorter term upwards trend here with, you know, the 800 and the 200, all of that coming in around the daily open. So I would anticipate we get some moves up to do a little bit more trapping before a move down in the latter part of the session. That's all I got on my end.
Well,
Thank you very
you
much.
have it, folks. We do think we're going to see a little bit more moves to the upside. Again, pay attention to those critical areas that we talked about because they are going to be very critical areas. So, trade carefully. Enjoy your day. Happy Friday, everyone. We'll see you next Monday. No, actually, we'll see you Sunday night. Keaton's Corner, 6:30. Let's see, what's that going to be? 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. Till then, we'll see you next